Hi, everyone. This is Ray Luskin, the creative activist. And I have with me today an honored guest, Victor Pacini. Victor and I met a number of years ago, and he is a creative activist. He has been working with children for a very long time, providing programs that empower them to create that confident voice, value that voice, and share their voice with the world. He has done so many wonderful programs, and I wanted to share him with you today because he brings a new lens and a creative way to talk about something that's really uncomfortable, and that is child sexual abuse. So welcome, Victor.
Oh, thank you. Really happy to be here. Thanks, Ray.
Well, we met like 8 years ago, and I heard you do your program about dreaming, and it was like there was a light that went off, and I felt this instant connection with you. And since then, I followed you, and we've talked many times over the years. But I would love people to hear a little bit about your background, why you do the work you're doing.
Sure, yeah. So basically, I started as an 8-year-old. When I was 8, I started performing in the Chicagoland area. It's kind of funny, but it's kind of what I did. But it was a tribute to Elvis. I started performing, and I was an opening act for a Chicago tribute to Elvis artist. And I would travel with the band on the weekends. I'd go to school during the week, and then travel on the weekends performing and loving it. It was almost like a calling. I wasn't necessarily very good at it, but I had the ability to get on a stage and perform, and it became kind of a cute thing. Well, make it a long story short, years went on, and I continued to perform and still loving it, but knowing that I wanted to go to college and I wanted to get a degree. And so I got a degree in graphic design from Columbia and started working in my field and realized that at the time I'm like, I think there's more to my life than just sitting in front of a computer designing for a company. The funny thing is when you're in college, you're doing your own projects, and I was already kind of doing what I didn't know I would be doing years later, but that was creating a place for people to be seen and heard through my graphic designs, through alcoholism awareness and sexual abuse awareness. But I didn't really think much of it. It's just what I did in college. And so after I got my degree and worked in the field, I decided to take some time away and kind of reflect. But keeping in mind, I'm still performing on the weekends, and so I took some time and I went to a school and became an aide and thought that maybe I wanted to be a teacher. And so it all started. I had an idea, and the idea was, I went up to the principal, I said, can I perform for your kids? Can I show them what I do in the nightclubs, singing Elvis Presley songs? And he agreed, and he kind of gave me my first chance to do it, which I was only doing it just to do it, just to share with the kids that this is what I do. And so it all started with a boy named Matt. Matt has Down syndrome, and he literally came up to me on the playground and said, I hear you're singing on Friday. I said, yeah. He said, could I sing with you? And I said, yeah, of course. So we worked up a song called Johnny Be Good. He came up in front of hundreds of kids, and every child gave him a standing ovation. And when they did that, he put up his hands like he had just won a gold medal, and it kind of a light bulb went off in my head, but not really. I was just so moved that the kids loved him so much that a teacher came up to me afterwards and says, you have something here. And I said, well, what is that? And they said, well, you're able to connect with kids. Maybe you use your music and you can come to schools. People do that for a living. And I said, okay. So I started brainstorming, and then that's when it all kind of hit. I started writing a lot of lyrics and creating just ideas in my head, and so I put together my first program, which was called My Dreams, and I started promoting it to schools to kind of get kids to start thinking about their goals, and it kind of all based on my own life. I don't remember my parents ever looking at me saying, hey, Victor, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was just, you just go to school and you go to college and that's it. So I wanted to give kids a voice about their dreams, about their goals, and to say, hey, you can do what you want to do, and if you love it enough, something good can come of it. So that started my whole program, my whole business. And
and that's how, and using the creativity as part of that. So that's what I love, is because there are so many ways, and so many people say, I'm not creative. I can't do that. I can't sing. I can't dance. But there are ways you can give and make a difference in your own creativity. It could be cooking. It could be, gardening. I mean, you can create a beautiful flower, and people don't recognize that as creativity. And so that's part of the creative activist message, that we all have something to give in our own unique ways. What I'd like I would love for you to tell people your backstory, because there is more to the entertainment. It's the pain, the story that motivates you every day.
Right, and so it all connects, because think about this. I'm surrounding myself, my parents who were very supportive in my performing when I was 8, but I was singing in nightclubs as an 8-year-old. So, there were some people that were not the most, they weren't the most respectable people that I was hanging out with. Not everybody, but there was always, you're in a nightclub, there was smoking, there was drinking, and as an 8-year-old, it was pretty scary. Well, my parents became friends with this family, and long story short, I was sexually abused by their son when I was 8 years old, and because I came from a family of where you sweep everything under the carpet, no one talks about it, I did just that. And on top of that, I was told by him to not say anything because my parents would be mad. So I kept it, literally an unsafe secret, for about 11 years of my life. The other part of the backstory is because my father was a very violent alcoholic, and obviously him being in these nightclubs didn't help the situation. So I would go to school, learn math and science, go home, keeping this an unsafe secret with my abuse, and then having to deal with my father, who was a violent alcoholic. It was almost like, how does one go to school and learn math and science? And then to make even matters worse, my parents, who I loved very much, and they were awesome people, my dad had a lot of demons. Well, when you have a father that's saying to you, you should be seen and not heard because you're just a child, it doesn't lend itself to come home and say, listen, I have something I've been keeping inside of me for a long time, and it's hurting me. Can I talk to you about it? He pretty much shuts you down. So that kind of set me up. And this is interesting because I get kids all the time that say, well, why didn't you go to your mom? Well, when your father, who you love so much, is your role model, and he's telling you over and over again that you should be seen and not heard, it kind of, how we do this, you focus on the bad sometimes. And if someone says you're not good, you start believing you're not good. And so I just started believing no one wants to hear my voice, not even my mom, who loves me very much. So I'm just going to keep quiet and do what I'm supposed to do. Well, that led to this unsafe secret for 11 years of my life, which caused pain, confusion about a lot of things. Going into high school, my first experience being with a male, I was very confused about everything. And it was a lot of pain, but no one knew it. That's what's so amazing. And kids like, well, you were voiceless. Didn't people know you weren't talking? I go, yes. I was voiceless when it came to my secret, but when it came to everything else, I was like everybody else. I was having fun. I was a good kid for the most part. I was playing baseball, loving to draw and be creative, and that's how, you would connect with this, Ray. This is how I dealt with my pain. I'd sit up in my bedroom and draw pictures, portraits of Elvis, because that was my safe place to go. And so that led me to create these programs ultimately. And even though back 20 years ago I couldn't really talk about sexual abuse awareness in schools because it was considered taboo, I went to another place and said, okay, well, I'm going to teach kids to have a voice when it comes to what they want in life. Let's start there. And now it's snowballed into, because Aaron's Law was passed a few years ago, it has snowballed into some great work that a lot of people are doing. So.
Okay, we're going to talk about Aaron's Law and Aaron in a little bit, but I want to go back to talking about using art as a tool for healing, for handling the pain, just because, as we've discussed in the past, I used that as well. And I also used it as a cry for help, but nobody saw it, when it was my own, experience. Because I like you, I kept it a secret. It started at 7, it ended at 13, and I never told anybody until I was 21. So I get that. And so I used art, I would paint, but I used to love, painting was, I love the Impressionists, soft, beautiful colors. And all of a sudden I got into raw, ugly paintings. My paintings all of a sudden had no faces. Any portrait I made, again, that was my way of saying I don't have a voice anymore. I don't have a way of sharing what's important to me. And so that was one path that I used in the beginning, and then later I used it to heal on the other end, to actually paint the pain. So let's, I'd love you to talk about how you've healed, and how did you deal with the anger and stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, dealing with the anger was, it was kind of outer directed. My father, who was basically, and I tell this to older students, he was basically a bully at home with his alcoholism, but my dad, he was a great guy. People either loved him or didn't love him because he was that black and white, but he was my dad, and I loved him. But when he would model for me at home that it's okay to hit, which I knew it wasn't right necessarily, but I would go to school thinking I was a little bit better than all the other kids, and I would, kind of outer direct my anger towards kids at school. And I wasn't a bad kid. I just didn't know how to deal with my frustrations at home. So I would pick on kids and think I was a little bit better than them. And of course I wasn't, but that's just the way I dealt with my pain. Other ways I dealt with pain, like I said, I would go inner-directed. I would draw. I would, work on things like that, especially when I got to college, right between I started talking about my abuse. My projects, I got straight A's in college and in high school for that matter, because all my art projects were geared towards helping people, and I didn't even know it. I was designing, PSA, public service announcements at Columbia College, and I literally, picture this. I had, if it was going to be a billboard, it would say, I was sexually abused when I was 8 years old, and I had a girl, and I used models for this. It was a photography class. I took a photo of the young girl model, and then I had her walk into, and she morphed into an adult who was writing on a chalkboard, I was sexually abused when I was 8 years old. So it's just the way I dealt with it. I was very creative about that because I had something to say, but I didn't know that I was going to be sharing it with the world, so to speak. I was just doing it for class to get a good grade in the class. But when you do something you love and you're not thinking about the outcome, just great things happen because you're doing what you love, and it snowballs into better things. So that's kind of how I dealt with all that. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, did anybody question why you were choosing that subject matter at all?
No, because
okay.
No, I know, because it really didn't. That didn't start until I got into college, and that's when I was just it was just after I started healing from the abuse. I didn't really use my art in high school to depict anything like that because I was
just curious because I know for myself. Yeah. My cries were not overt, but again, I was in a family where we don't talk about anything, and everything, whatever happens here stays here, and who would believe the pillar of a community would be doing this, and all those kind of things. And so one of the things I did in high school, we had to write a paper, and combine two subjects. So I wrote about the history of syphilis and some health thing. Now, I was, 18 at the time? I didn't have a boyfriend. You would have thought somebody would think, something's not quite right here. Why is she talking about sexual diseases? But no one got the clue, and I didn't know how to share it at the point. And so, again, that's one of the reasons I love what you do, and that you are sharing your story and you are finding ways to help young kids, to talk about this as well as parents. It's an uncomfortable subject. So let's talk about Aaron's Law and how you met Aaron and part of that work.
So Aaron's Law, for your listeners that don't know, a lot of people don't know what it really is unless you're in education or you're a social worker of any kind or a psychologist. But Aaron's Law was passed in 2013 in Illinois. Aaron is from Schaumburg, Illinois, and she was abused repeatedly as a little girl. And again, the common side effects of it is you keep it a secret and you don't tell anybody, and it leads to all kinds of destructive things. And She, I believe, had some learning disabilities, I think, or something happened stemming from the abuse that they kind of attribute to it, just her reaction to the whole process, because it was an ongoing thing for her. But as she got older, she got her degree in social work, and she made a decision that she's like, they're teaching fire drills and tornado drills and lockdowns and stranger danger and dare, but they're not teaching kids how to stay safe from unsafe touch. So this was a mission for her to say, they need to start teaching kids in school, because if they would have had something like this when I was younger, then maybe I wouldn't have kept it a secret for so long, or maybe it never would have happened because I would have been more aware of my surroundings, which I think is a huge benefit of Aaron's Law, is to really educate young kids. So anyway, the law.
So when you say young, let's talk about the age so people know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, the law states pre-K to 12th grade. So that would be 5-year-olds learning this right before they get into kindergarten and kindergarten.
Okay.
So you're really kind of starting it young, and it's nothing complex. It's very simple, but I'll get into that in a second. So Aaron got the law passed in 2013, and now it's been received and passed in, I think, 26 or 27 states now.
I love her, and I always love her posts when she's carrying her children with her on all these places, going to Australia, New Zealand as well. Just she's so passionate, and she's made such a huge difference in people's lives by doing this and constantly talking about this. So she is an inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. And the law states that every public school now, not private, which is interesting to me, but every public school has to have sexual abuse awareness and prevention curriculum starting every year, starting in 2013 in Illinois, and then everyone else after that. And it's a yearly law that even recommends up to 4 communications a year based on Aaron's Law. So do you want me to jump into a little bit how I got into talking or getting into that? Okay, so I met
because
Aaron.
I think as creative activists, we have to know that we also collaborate, that it isn't, we just don't sit in a castle somewhere by ourselves, that it is part of the process of doing good in the world. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking, all my programs that I've been presenting to schools over the years have all been based on my life experiences in one way or another, from my Kindness Challenge, which is about teaching kids about respect, to my Mission I'm Possible program, which is really for middle school students and high school students to talk about overcoming adversity. I use a lot of music. Why not? Because I've been singing since I was a kid. I have great musicians that have come into my life that write music for me, and I use music as my tool. Everyone has a different creative way, like you just said a little while ago. So I sat down and I said to myself, I think I can create a program that will be well received not only to schools but to kids. They won't feel frightened or threatened, and even more importantly is you got to be able to get the parents to buy into it, because this is a very difficult topic, as you said. So I literally was at a school doing one of my kindness workshops, and they had mentioned that this is right when Aaron's Law was passed, and they said that we have an agency coming out to do Aaron's Law. I said, can I come and observe it? They said, sure. So I sat down and I watched this kindergarten, first, second grade group go through this program, and it was awesome. And the speaker was fantastic. I mean, she was engaging them, and I was taking notes. But the interesting thing was she was talking and leading up to the whole idea of unsafe touch, and she used the word, the person Alyssa, this made-up name of a made-up girl up on the screen. Alyssa went to her uncle's house, and one thing led to another, whatever she said, and literally a first grader raised his hand and said, is that person real? And a light bulb went off over my head, and I started being more creative, and I said, wait a second, if I'm going to be presenting this program, the kids have to know my story. I have to share my story, because that's what is going to help kids, through my voice, be able to help them use their voice if they can connect to somebody who has gone through this. Now, when I created the program, my K-1-2 program, the kids never know it's me. I wrote a book called Be Seen and Heard, which is about a little boy who was keeping an unsafe secret. And so the K-1-2 students never, kindergarten, first, second grade, never know it's me unless they ask, which they never really do. I don't start sharing that it's me in the book until third grade. That's where I felt that it was a good time to share with kids that this is my story. And it's been well received I've been going to schools now for doing that program now for, I think this is my third year, second or third year, I think third year, and I'm booked almost every day of the school year going to school districts, and it's been amazing. I mean, the results have been unbelievable, actually. So.
Well, how do you measure success in this case? Have they noticed more kids coming forward? That kind of thing. I'm just really curious how they are measuring the success of that.
Well, okay, so I measure the success of it as can a program come to your school and not frighten kids? And mine certainly has done that. Kids leave wanting to talk about it because I make it fun. And people are like, there's no way you can make a program about sexual abuse awareness fun. I go, you want to bet? I mean, that's how kids learn. And if you're too serious, one school district that I've talked to before they booked me, they had the sheriff's department, and the sheriff's department was not chunking it properly, and so the kids were hearing different things, and they walked away more shut down than they came to the program. Well, you want the kids that are keeping an unsafe secret to be able to talk, and you want the kids that are not connecting to the unsafe secret to at least want to talk about it in general. So I think the first thing that you want to measure success with is it frightening the kids? Is it a safe place for kids to come? Number one, and number two, specifically with my program that I know of, I've had over 50 disclosures of kids coming forward. Now, a lot of those have come directly to me after my program, and a lot of them have gone to their other trusted heroes and adults like their teachers and social workers and parents. So to me, that's success. That is complete success, without a doubt. And I don't even know, I go to a lot of schools year after year and they'll say, oh, we had 2 last year, and I didn't even know that. So I don't even know how many more above the 50 that are coming forward and talking about it. And remember this, Ray, it's not, this program that I created it's fulfilling Aaron's Law, it's covering all the points. But again, most kids are not sexually abused that are sitting in my audience. So how do I connect to them? Well, you talk about bullying a little bit. I believe sexual abuse is an ultimate form of bullying, and so what I tell kids is, hey, if you're not connecting to my story today, that's awesome news. But if you're holding on to anything that's hurting you in your mind and heart and you're not telling anybody, that's called an unsafe secret. So I'm asking all of you to leave here today and go talk about it. So it's about all kinds of unsafe secrets. So it's really important that people know that. I mean, it's fulfilling the law, but it's also getting kids to come forward and say, I'm not happy at home. My parents are fighting. I mean, kids need to talk about this stuff.
Right.
So,
And how many, and that's where the secrets start, because you don't know who to go to, and it affects every part of your life when you're holding on to that. If you see your parents fighting and hurting each other and all of that, and
right.
And
where does
and it's a definition of abuse, because abuse is not always physical and sexual. There is an emotional abuse component that a lot of people, in the psychological aspect, that people don't talk about. Yet it can be as harmful as physical and sexual abuse.
Right. Absolutely.
So now, how do you talk to parents about this and have them feel comfortable? What would you tell parents to do?
Well, okay, so I'll work backwards here when I say this. When I offer school districts a live parent component of me coming in and working with their parents prior to me working with their kids, which makes total sense. But if I start at the end of the program, when I'm all done, I'll have a lot of parents over the years they'll raise their hand and they'll say, because by law you can opt your child out. And I'll get a parent to say, I love what you just shared with me, but I'm on the fence. And I say, why? Well, because I don't know how to talk about this at home. I mean, how do you have this great program, the kids come home, they want to talk to me about it. How do I talk to my kids about sexual abuse? It's very uncomfortable. So what happens is the parents are bringing in their fears and their expectations, and that's what is putting their thought of opting their child out. They're not thinking, and believe me, I'm a dad, I get this. They're not thinking like what is good for my child. They're thinking, I don't want to be in a situation that's going to make me uncomfortable, which is completely okay to think that. I mean, it's not an easy topic to talk about. So I solve that problem by every student that comes to my program gets a bookmark, and they, on the back of the bookmark, can get a free copy of my book that I use as my tool in my program. And so I tell the parent, download the book and let your child, if they're young, let them read it to you, or you read it to them, and start a conversation. It doesn't have to be uncomfortable, because never in my young programs of K1, 2, even 3, 4, I use the word sexual abuse ever. So I want you parents to know that, right? So right off the bat. And I think what makes my parent night so successful is I'm working with the parents and I'm telling them, listen, you're here tonight. Number one, you're wearing a couple of hats. I'm going to ask you to wear a couple of hats. The first hat is of a parent because that's why you're here tonight. And the second hat is I want you to wear a hat of a child. So when I walk you through this program tonight, I'm not walking you through it like you're sitting here as parents. I'm going to walk you through it, and I want you to imagine yourself as a child sitting here. So when I ask you questions, don't answer the question based on what you would say as a parent. Answer it as if you were a child sitting here. What would you say? So that's what really calms them down. And my goal, my tagline for my parent night, if I were to use the word tagline, is for them to leave with peace of mind. And I have to say, most of the time they do. I mean, they're still concerned when they leave, and they're still a little nervous, but they really calm down. And after they see me walk them through exactly what I walk their kids through, they're like, oh, my gosh, this is so appropriate for my child, and it's important. You know, they get fears like, you know, is this a sex ed class? I'm like, no, this is not a sex ed class. This has nothing to do with sex, nothing. And so they're like, oh, okay. Are you going to use the word sexual abuse? No, I'm not. Are you going to talk about the actual private parts? And I said, no. In fact, I learned from a Northbrook, Illinois, I can say this, I know you have parents all over, but Northbrook, Illinois, I was at a school, and parents said, we like to use the words private body parts. And I said, may I use that? Sure. I think it's less threatening. So I say to the parents, I will never talk about the actual private body parts. I will bring up private body parts, but that's your job as a parent to teach your kids about the actual anatomy. That's not for me to say. I come from a very conservative approach to my program because I want it to be that way and let it open up for further discussion. I hope that helps.
Right. It creates a safe space for parents and children because if you're uncomfortable, you're not going to talk about it, you know.
Exactly.
For the kids as well as the adults. And you know, knowing the statistics, how many of these people have been abused in their own life, you know? So, and never dealt with it or told to sing or slow. So when you look at the numbers, you know, they have to be. So, you know, room full of kids.
Yeah.
So, so you're bringing it up. And I think that finding that voice, if you can give them the comfort of being able to talk about their kids, it also gives them permission to think about their own experience and maybe come forward and get the help they need.
Oh, yeah, and there's been numerous parents that have come up to me after my program and said, you know, thank you for coming here. This is something I wish I could have had when I was a student. I've kept it as unsafe secret for 30 years, you know, which is unbelievable to me. I've had teachers not come to my program because they knew what it was about and they were dealing with their own abuse. I've had a teacher at one time. I was showing a picture of a dentist, and I say to the young kids, can a dentist touch your private body parts? And as soon as she saw that, she left the room because it was her dentist that did this to her when she was young. She was going through the healing process of it, but she wasn't expecting to see that during the program, so she had to leave the program because this is probably, and as you know, it's one of the most difficult things to have to heal from because it's such a violation of the body and the mind, and it's just horrible. You know, and I'm very fortunate if I can say this. It only happened one time to me, you know, and it happened by a friend of the family. And I hurt so much for people that, you know, it's the family members that have done this. And it's hard because if it happens by the family, you got to keep seeing them over and over again. And then it keeps
right.
going
I know
on.
that it's violation because it was my grandfather. And and you end up, you know, being split. You know, I mean, there were moments I really thought I was like, you know, what was that movie about? All About Eve. I thought like, oh my God, I've got all these personalities going on because of that.
Right.
You know, and it was like, because I had to pretend. I was a great actress. Didn't know it. But, you know, I had to, when I saw him, I had to be this person, wait home, this person. Yeah, and it was a constant. And then, so, and it has long-term consequences. And hopefully everybody who's listening, please get help. It's really, and find your voice. You know, just share it with one human being and you will change your life just by that moment because you're empowering yourself. You're taking back your power. You're not letting that person who violated you run your life anymore. And we are running out of time, Victor, and we could probably talk for another hour, but I'd love people to find out, you know, tell them how they can get a hold of you and find out about if you want to have you come to your school and give them some information.
Sure. My website is victorpacini.com, Victor, and then Pacini, Pacini.com, and that will give you all kinds of great information on how you can get a hold of me. All my contact information is on there. You can also go to www.aaronslawsolutionbook.com, aaronslawsolutionbook.com, and it's a book that I just finished. It was based on an interview like this where you can download the book. It was turned into a book, and it just talks about what we're talking about basically, and some of the concerns that schools have, the difficulty of social workers having to teach this themselves because they're uncomfortable, or if they teach it, they can't see red flags that are going on in their classrooms when teaching it. So it talks all about that. It's a free ebook. Feel free to download it. So.
Oh, that's fabulous, Victor. Thank you so much for being on the call today. And the information is so invaluable, and you inspire me every day with your story and the work you're doing in the world to create more confident kids who can actually express what's going on in their lives, as you said, whether it's bullying, abuse, mom and dad are having problems, because there's got to be some way for these kids to find their voice. So thank you so much. This
Likewise,
is Ray Luskin.
Back to you.
All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.